welcome back to the Daily Dive. Today on the show, we're chatting with Curt Marvis, CEO of QYOU Media. QYOU Media operates in India and the United States, producing and distributing content created by social media stars and digital content creators. Curt, welcome to the Dive.
Thank you very much, Cassandra. A pleasure to be here.
Thanks so much for joining us. So Curt, let's start off the top. What's the 2-minute elevator pitch for QYOU Media?
Well, QYOU Media was based on the concept that short form video content and social video content would be what anybody under the age of 35 and really even younger than that would be living and breathing and watching as the main way of them seeing video. And of course, we started this company about 5 years ago, 6 years ago almost now, in terms of the concept and the idea. And back then there was no TikTok. Instagram was really a text-based thing. Facebook was still a text and image-based thing. So we were really looking at this world that was going to explode in terms of short-form video content that speaks to a young audience. I mean, behind me, those records are all from my years working with MTV, which of course was the voice of a generation in the 80s and early 90s. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Snap, these are the voices of the current generation. And so what QYOU Media is all about is curating, finding the best of that, putting that together in one place under one brand, and providing that not only for a user, for a consumer, but also for a brand that wants to reach that audience. So if you think of television programming, the best shows that people are producing, or you think of radio playing the most popular or favorite songs that people are listening to for music, we're playing, producing, and packaging the best short-form video content.
Okay, so why would an influencer in India choose to work with QYOU Media as opposed to owning their own content?
Well, we don't actually own the content. We license it, and we license it non-exclusively, actually. In fact, it might seem counterintuitive, but we actually want that creator to continue to run the content on their own platform. I tell a story a few years ago when I was talking to one of India's biggest social media and social video guys. And he said, Curt, why would I put my content up with you when I post it on my YouTube channel, 20 million people watch it? And I said, well, that's fantastic. That's incredible. I said, but that means there's about 1.2 billion people in India that haven't seen it. Yeah. So let's find you some of those. And I say to people all the time that if you take, the most popular content, if you take a TV series like Friends, Netflix a couple of years ago paid $100 million to license Friends for one season, all the episodes of Friends for one season. Well, why would Netflix want to pay $100 million for a television series that had been around for 25 years, that everybody had already seen, that had been on home video, on free TV, on everything? It's because people like to watch content they love again and again. And when you've got a brand built about that, it has value. So our business is going to these creators and saying, what Q stands for is we're the best of. It's like having your artwork in a museum. If your artwork's in a museum, that means it's incredibly special. Yeah. Okay. Well, Q is meant to build a brand around having the best and the most exciting and coolest and most appealing short form video content under one brand in one place. If you've got it there, then that is basically like saying, here's a stamp of approval saying that yours is the best stuff. And so most people, not everyone, but most people are interested in that.
Okay, so how would you explain to us Canadians the Indian media landscape for young people?
Well, India is years ago, when I was an executive at Lionsgate, and actually before that with a previous company I had, I did a fair amount of travel and spent time in China. And China was really the promised land back then. This is going back, 20 years ago. And look, a lot of that proved to be true. And to this day, China has put out, many of sort of the seminal and first mover technologies and things that have become huge elsewhere in the world. I like to think that that's what India is today and what India is going to continue to become. India was a little behind that for a variety of reasons. But India is a fascinating environment to work on. First of all, the business of India is English, not Chinese. So when you do a contract in India, you're doing it in Chinese. When you're negotiating with an Indian company, you're negotiating in English. And so English is sort of the language that's used. And because the British were in India for so long, sorry, we're next to a fire station. India was under British rule for so long. The rule of law that doesn't exist as much as China is sort of Western style law is the way things work in India. Beyond all of that, in terms of just doing business there, is the youth population of India is just, it's a rocket ship. I mean, I don't know exactly what the number is today, but I want to say that there's something like 550 million or 600 million people in India under the age of 35. They have the largest population in the world of people under the age of 25. Wow. It's because Chinese went to the one kid rule, et cetera. India has not done that. So India is a booming country in terms of what's happening in the economy and elsewhere. The final thing is India, by virtue of its linkage to Bollywood, which was a larger filmmaking center than Hollywood even was, has had spectacular growth in terms of YouTube video content creators and social video creators. So Facebook, I think their biggest territory in the world in terms of size of the audience is India. Instagram's second largest audience size or user size rather outside of the United States is India. TikTok, before they got banned in India, their biggest country where they were booming was India. So the social media environment, the social video environment, the business environment of India is spectacular. I mean, it's staggering in terms of how fast it's growing. The final point I would make from an investor point of view is if you look at the India marketplace, it's literally the fastest growing country in the world in terms of media and mobile technology. QYOU Platforms Group, JIO, which is owned by one of the world's richest men, a guy named Mukesh Ambani, they successfully raised $20 billion over the COVID time period. So over the last 3 or 4 months, they raised $20 billion for the QYOU Platforms Group, which changed from really an oil and gas company into a media business and a mobile phone business. They raised $20 million from Google, from Facebook, from KKR, which is one of the largest private equity groups, from the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, and on and on. These people are pumping money into the India landscape and into the India environment because it's such a spectacular opportunity.
Okay, so Curt, I have to ask you about MTV. Can you share one of your favorite war stories from your days there?
How many hours is this interview?
I got time.
That's a really tough question. I mean, as anybody who's known me for a while, when you spend over a decade working with heavy metal was big back then. So when you're working with, Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Bon Jovi, Judas Priest, Ozzy Osbourne, Metallica, Megadeth, Poison, Aerosmith, the number of stories that come out of those experiences can last quite a long time. One of my favorite stories, actually, and it's not too long of a story, is we were working with the Rolling Stones back in, I think it was late 80s, early 90s. And it was the third video off this record that we were doing. And Keith Richards, who normally didn't sort of delve into this, Keith's a classic guy who's all about music. He was upset that the budget for the third video was too much money. And somehow he found this out and became very irritated. So we were in Washington, D.C. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and Wayne Isham, my partner, and I staggered back into the hotel because we'd been out all night drinking in Washington, D.C., having fun. And we walked back into the hotel, and the manager is waiting for us, and they're waiting. Keith's been waiting for you. Keith's been waiting for you. And we go into the bar of the hotel, which of course is closed. There's no one there, and we see off in the distance, there's Keith sitting there, and he sees us, and he pulls up a knife, and he starts going like this, slitting his throat like this. And we walk over, Keith, what's up? He goes, yeah, I won't use the language he used. I'll just, you bastards, you're screwing us. You're spending too much money. I'm going to come tonight to your hotel rooms. I'm going to slit both your throats. And this is going on. Well, we're drunk, and he's obviously drunk. And so the bartender, who's the only guy in the place besides the manager, comes over and says, hey, does anybody want a drink? And the manager's like this, and Wayne and I, my partner and I are like, yeah, sure, I'll have a drink. And Keith is like, I want 2 Long Island iced teas. And I'm saying, Keith, are you sure? I want 2 Long Island iced teas. So the bartender goes off, he makes them, Keith keeps yelling at us, he serves them. Conversation goes on. At one point, Keith gets really upset and he stands up and he swings his arm and he hits one of the glasses and it flies across the room and smashes all over the floor. And everybody's kind of sitting there looking at each other, and he looks at all of us and he says, "Now you know why I ordered 2.
Brilliant. That's awesome.
So for many years, a joke inside my company and among all of us would be, "I want 2 margaritas. Give me 2 beers."
Yeah, you gotta have a backup.
To this day.
Oh, that's hilarious. I love it.
Funniest part of the whole story, I think, is the next day when we got on the plane to fly to, I think it was Cleveland. Keith gets on the plane. He didn't remember any of it. Oh. Nothing. Had no memory whatsoever. I sat next to Charlie Watts, the Stones drummer, and he sits down, and Charlie's very, very proper, and he looks at me and says, "Oh, good morning, Curt. Did you go to the Smithsonian while we were there?" And I said, "No, Charlie, I'm afraid I didn't make it on this trip."
Next time. Oh, that's awesome.
The one thing you find in working with rock bands is usually they're all different personalities. I mean, it doesn't matter whether, it's Motley Crue, the Rolling Stones, or, Bon Jovi or Pink Floyd. They're all different guys.
Yeah, the creative type, eh? They just have minds of their own for sure. Okay, so let's talk about Tinley Beverages. You're also on the board for Tinley. What got you involved here?
I actually know Jeff Mazur, the CEO of Tinley, from back when he was working with a company that our chairman, Scott Patterson, was part of, called Jump TV. And so that's when we originally met. And frankly, Jeff came to me very, very early on and asked me if I wanted to invest in Tinley, which was then creating a CBD beverage. And this was before CBD was anybody knew anything about CBD. And I told him, I said, "Look, I drink beverages, but I don't know much about the business itself. So that's about it." And I said, "I really just don't know that I'm the right guy to do this. I just don't understand it. Not sure about this cannabis business." He was very early. Yeah. And Jeff, to his credit, has stuck with it. He's done an incredible job weaving through what's been an extraordinarily, challenging environment. I mean, I think people don't understand the regulatory issues that surround the cannabis industry to this day and how vexing they can be in a company. But Jeff has stuck with it. Tinley not only has put itself in a position, I think, to have huge upside potential in terms of the cannabis drinks that it's now creating out of a big factory here in Long Beach, about 30 minutes from where I'm sitting. But also they've gotten into the non-alcoholic beverage business with a brand called Beckett's. And the combination now of what we think can happen with Beckett's, which was not really, just sort of, I guess, serendipitous things happen when you stay around long enough. And so I have, I'm excited to be a board member at Tinley, and I think shareholders are going to see a lot of benefits for those that have hung on.
Well, thanks so much for joining us on the show today, Curt.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and I'm happy to see that Deep Dive is getting into the world of video, as they should be doing.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. And for our viewers at home, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next time on The Dive.